More bad news for China's version of Uber. Rideshare service DiDi stock shares plunged over 20% after a crackdown from Chinese authorities. Its fall from stardom comes after a breakout listing in the U.S. stock market. An American city councilman removed from his post, all because he vocally blames Beijing for the pandemic and opposed a sister city agreement with China. Over 500 Chinese students have their U.S. visas denied. They are hoping to study science and engineering abroad. An executive order by the Trump administration is in play. Did Chinese authorities know about the CCP-virus as early as fall of 2019? Months before China's alleged patient zero appeared, Wuhan held an emergency response drill in case a new coronavirus strain were to appear in Wuhan. And Japan may join the U.S. in defending Taiwan if Beijing invades the island. Japan's deputy prime minister says his country could interpret a Chinese invasion as a threat to Japan's survival. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. First, we look to the latest development of Chinese ride-hailing service DiDi. That's after it endured a major crackdown on its home turf. And DiDi's Juliet Song has the details.
China's largest ride-hailing company is getting more bad news. Its stock shares plunging over 20%. That's after Chinese authorities ordering a crackdown on the company. Just a week ago, ride-hailing service DiDi became a star in America's stock market.
They're going to be raising just about $4 billion. That values the company, in and around the $70 billion range.
The company has been called China's version of Uber. It boasts over 300 million users in the country, but lately it's been losing money.
This company has lost about $15 billion to date. And in 2020, it lost $2 billion, and for the first quarter, $1 billion. So the losses are staggering.
It's now looking to raise big money in the United States. The company recently listed in the U.S. stock market and started the process of selling shares to the general public, what's called an IPO, or initial public offering.
So this looks to be one of the largest IPOs this year globally, if not potentially the biggest IPO.
But what happened after all the buzz came as a surprise. 2 days after the company went from private to public, Chinese authorities went after it, ordering a cybersecurity review into DiDi. Soon after, the crackdown started escalating. China removed DiDi from the country's digital app stores. Officials also suspended new user registrations on the app. But Chinese authorities didn't give details on the reason behind the move. It alleges the company has seriously violated Chinese laws regarding the collection of user data. DiDi says its revenue in China could take a hit following the crackdown. Still, in a statement, the company thanked authorities for their guidance and promised to fix the issue. It's left many wondering whether Beijing is using the crackdown to send a message. Aside from DiDi, China also went after 2 other companies listed in the U.S. stock market. One interpretation is that the company's influence is making Beijing nervous. Major ones like DiDi or tech giant Tencent have access to huge amounts of user data. This in turn gives them power that Beijing may not want them to have. The latest crackdown might just be a flex, a reminder of who's actually in charge. Juliet Song, NTD News.
One city official from Southern California has been removed from the council. He claims that the Chinese regime is responsible for the pandemic. He also opposed a sister city agreement with China. NTD's Brandon Dre has more on the story.
Earlier this year, the Anaheim City Council voted unanimously to remove Larry Larson from the Sister City Commission.
And tonight,
Mr. Larson, I'm sorry.
Yes, I understand. Tonight there's going to be a kangaroo court and a lynch mob, and they're going to destroy me and my reputation, kick me off Sister Cities, which you voted to put me on because I said China-virus.
We have a city council to now vote on the motion, which is voted to consider removal of Larry Larson from the Sister City. There's a motion and a second.
Anaheim is part of Sister Cities International, a nonprofit that bridges U.S. cities with others around the world. The commission recently considered adding Pudong, a district in Shanghai, China, to the list of partnering cities. Both Anaheim and Pudong are home to Disney amusement parks. But Larson challenged the idea after the virus harmed both children's education and local tourism during the pandemic.
Anaheim has suffered greatly. And it would be kind of like your next door neighbor burned down your house, and after you rebuilt, you invite him over for the housewarming barbecue.
Larson says his opposition to the Pudong partnership and controversial comments about the virus influenced the council's decision.
The political pressure was put on them. I was an easy sacrificial lamb.
He says he received no explanation or due process for his removal.
And I can't help but think that this was directed by people beyond the city council, who is controlled pretty much everything they do by Disney Corp.
Now, I reached out to the city of Anaheim for comment. They did not respond to the request. In Los Angeles, Brandon Dre, NTD News.
Then U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo previously warned that the CCP's official overseas propaganda department directly manages China's sister city partnership programs. A research paper by U.S.-based Hoover Institute has also warned about China's sister city partnerships. The paper identifies such partnerships as a political tool that Beijing uses to shape opinions at a local level. The research says Beijing understands clearly that local leaders today become the national leaders of tomorrow. Over 500 Chinese students hoping to study science and engineering in the U.S. have failed to get their visas approved. That's according to CCP mouthpiece China Daily, quoting an insider. According to the report, these students plan to get a master's or a PhD in the U.S. Most of them are going to major in electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, computer science, chemistry, material science, or biomedical science. The schools they're going to attend include MIT, Harvard, and Yale, among others. The report says most of these students applied for their student visa during the Biden administration. The insider says around 125 of the students have already gotten scholarships from the colleges they are about to attend. The U.S. reportedly denied them visa based on the Immigration and Nationality Act and an executive order by the Trump administration. The order prohibits students tied to the Chinese military from entering the U.S. The CCP's mouthpiece blames the Biden administration for saying one thing but doing another. They claim that President Biden is continuing what they claim to be Trump's wrong policy, and it severely undermines, as they call, the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese students. U.S.-based media, Radio Free Asia, or RFA, questions whether China knew about the CCP virus as early as the fall of 2019. That's months before China's alleged first confirmed case of the pneumonia of unknown origin, which was later named the new coronavirus, or COVID-19, also known as the CCP virus. The RFA opinion article mentions that Wuhan authorities held an emergency response drill in case a new coronavirus were to appear in Wuhan. The drill was conducted 30 days before the 2019 Military World Games, with the stated aim of preventing foreign soldiers from bringing a new coronavirus into Wuhan. A report on the drill appeared on the front page of a major local CCP media outlet on September 18, 2019. The article included the term new coronavirus. It says the drill adapted the real-world situation. It mimics the entire process of handling a new coronavirus infection case identified in an airport passageway. The process includes many aspects, from epidemiological investigation to medical screenings, setting up temporary quarantine areas, isolation tests, patient transfers, and hygiene treatments. The drill even goes so far as to do contact tracing. The article says the Wuhan CDC confirmed 2 hours later that the case was clinically diagnosed as new coronavirus. According to Radio Free Asia's opinion article, the CCP's 2019 report proves that even then, Wuhan authorities knew of the existence of the new coronavirus and its risks and dangers. RFA says the drill was likely in preparation for a potential outbreak of the virus. The article says under the heavy pressure of international communities holding Beijing accountable for the pandemic, one of the CCP's biggest concerns now is to explain this 2019 drill. Coming up, Japan may join the U.S. in defending Taiwan if Beijing invades the island. The Japanese deputy prime minister says Japan may interpret a Chinese invasion as a threat to Japan's survival. More on that after the break.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.
If the Chinese regime invades Taiwan, Japan may join the U.S. in defending the island. This, says Japanese Deputy Prime Minister Taro Aso. He said on Monday that Japan may interpret the Chinese attack as a threat to Japan's survival. And if that's the case, then Japan must defend Taiwan together with the U.S. And it seems Taiwan welcomes the remark. On Tuesday, the island's foreign minister responded, saying that Taiwan will work with countries with similar values to maintain peace and stability in the region. But the Chinese Foreign Ministry protested Japan's remark on the same day. They called the remark dangerous and damaging to relations between the two countries. The Deputy Prime Minister is the highest level Japanese official to have made such a pledge towards Taiwan. Aso also says that if Taiwan falls, Okinawa will be next. The Japanese Okinawa is only a few hundred miles from Taiwan. He has also labeled the Taiwan situation as extremely intense. This is in light of CCP leader Xi Jinping's recent remarks regarding the island. Xi said that China's complete reunification with Taiwan is a historic mission and an unshakable commitment of the Communist Party of China. Does Beijing already have an invasion plan for Taiwan? China's state-owned magazine Naval and Merchant Ships recently published a three-step battle strategy for attacking Taiwan. Step 1, Beijing fires ballistic missiles to attack Taiwan's airports, early warning radar systems, anti-aircraft missile bases, and decision-making facilities. Next, cruise missiles bomb Taiwan's military bases, arsenals, radar systems, communications infrastructure, highways, and other key roads. And finally, Chinese ships and rocket forces launch artillery attacks to remove any remaining obstacles. Then Chinese Marine Corps land on Taiwan. This step-by-step plot comes on the heels of Xi Jinping's speech last week about Taiwan, given during the Communist Party's 100th anniversary. Now, experts are laying out what the magazine article might mean for the democratic island. A military expert from the Taiwan National Policy Foundation told the Epoch Times that the plan shouldn't be underestimated. He says it implies Beijing does have a plan for taking over Taiwan. But a director at Taiwan's Institute for National Defense and Security Research says otherwise. He told the Epoch Times that the publication is just Chinese propaganda and pointed out that the same magazine publishes similar articles every year around this time. He branded the plot just an armchair strategy coined by a group of editors and reporters. The CCP is outsourcing some farmers' land in a Chinese village for profit. The farmers are no longer allowed to harvest or cultivate crops on their farm, and a couple there is now under de facto house arrest for defying the plan.
In a village in eastern China's Jiangsu province, the local CCP committee is allegedly outsourcing farmers' land for more profit. Farmers are not allowed to harvest or cultivate crops on the farm they leased. A local farmer tells NTD about the situation.
We planted rice on June 24th. The Communist Party secretary of the village called people in to wipe out our crops. We called the police, but the police didn't care about it. The authorities just didn't allow us to plant. They actually wanted to monopolize the village's farmland resources.
The Communist Party owns all the land in China. People only can get the right to use it for a limited time, and the party can take back the land at any time whenever it wants. Yin lives with her husband in a village in Wuxi City in Jiangsu province. They cultivated nearly 10 acres of farmland. Most of the land was leased from the village's CCP committee, and their lease contract is supposed to last 30 years. Yin says that the CCP secretary of the village embezzled their farming subsidies and prevented them from harvesting and farming.
My husband went to harvest wheat on May 28th. The village's CCP secretary stopped him and had people in the village beat him. Then he took my husband to the local police station and detained him for a day and a night.
Yin says her husband went to harvest wheat again after being released, but he was stopped again.
We were not allowed to take the harvested wheat home, and they rotted in the field. The rest of the wheat was snatched by the local authorities.
Yin says the village CCP secretary wanted to outsource the farm to other farmers for more profit, but the secretary denies it. saying that the village CCP committee is planting the farmland themselves. Yin adds that their lease contract of 30 years is not yet over. Over the weekend, Yin told the Epoch Times that her and her husband are living under surveillance at home. The local authorities sent 4 police officers to guard them. Even their phones were snatched, so they couldn't contact the outside world. This is not the first time this couple was put under de facto house arrest. In 2012, local authorities forcibly demolished their house to make room for more profitable projects. Since then, they have often been summoned by police, detained, and put under house arrest for defending their rights.
Over the weekend, a Chinese city bordering Burma, also known as Myanmar, has started to experience the third wave of the CCP-virus outbreak. The more transmissible Delta variant is responsible for it this time. Officials reported 5 new cases on Monday in Raili City in southwestern China's Yunnan province. Chinese media say they are the Delta variant. NTD cannot independently verify these figures. That's because the Chinese regime has tight control over what information is released, and it has a history of underreporting virus cases. The city has adopted strict access control measures since Monday. Residents there wishing to leave the city are required to provide a negative test result within 3 days. A local resident told NTD people from outside the city can't enter the city either. Residents started to store food. Vegetables at local supermarkets were all sold out, and a new round of virus testing started. Schools are still open, but some shops are closed. A local resident told NTD local authorities only told residents that 5 people were infected, but it didn't say where they have been. She added that some places on the border with Burma have been shut down since Monday. Local authorities adopted a level 3 emergency response to combat the spread of the virus. That's the 3rd highest in the 4-level system. The city already experienced 2 outbreaks last September and this March. In the middle of a global chip shortage, the UK government has let a Chinese-owned company buy the UK's largest chip producer. The acquisition was announced yesterday. NTD's Patrick Hayden in London has the story.
A Chinese-owned firm called Nexperia has acquired the UK's largest semiconductor producer. Currently, there's a global shortage of chips, and some say the deal has national security implications.
Well, if this deal was to have taken place in the United States, there's absolutely no doubt that it would have been hauled up before CFIUS, the Committee on Foreign Investment.
In April, the UK government introduced the National Security and Investment Act, which includes preventing key assets from being taken over by foreign powers.
The UK was meant to have powers that were equivalent, if not tougher, but Kwasi Kwarteng, the business secretary, has inexplicably decided not to act.
The UK Business Secretary says the government is monitoring but doesn't want to intervene at the moment.
And I think this is a real test moment for the UK's powers. If the business secretary doesn't act here in a case in which national security concerns are perhaps clearer than any other that I could imagine, many people will feel that the UK's powers are all bark and no bite.
Armstrong says most company valuations globally have been decimated, with the exception of China.
China, the country that has an awful lot to answer for in the spread of the disease, is seeming to be the economic beneficiary of it.
CNBC sources say the deal is worth $87 million. If so, that seems cheap, as large semiconductor foundries tend to cost closer to the $1 billion and upward mark. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
Semiconductors are the key of Beijing's competition with the free world. Chips are the brains of our electronic devices. Without them, modern life wouldn't be possible. Chips power our phones, control our cars, and run our computers. Not only that, they are a foundational technology, and all other technologies and many industries are based on chips. That's including the defense industry. China's chip technology is far behind the U.S.'s. One of the methods Beijing uses to catch up is technology theft. Another one is buying chips factories in other countries. Hong Kong's leader is saying that proposed changes to the city's privacy law will only target illegal doxing behavior. She's referring to the practice of sharing people's personal data without their consent. Here's more on Hong Kong.
Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam has responded to a warning that Facebook, Google and other tech firms would have to stop offering services in the city if privacy laws there change. Lam said Tuesday the proposed changes will only target illegal behaviour. She singled out doxing, the sharing of people's personal data without their consent. During the city's 2019 protests, police were doxxed when their details were released online. In late June, the Asia Internet Coalition, which counts Facebook, Google and Apple as members, issued a letter to Hong Kong officials. They argue changes to privacy laws in Hong Kong could see individuals hit with severe sanctions, but gave no further details. Lam responded to reporter questions over that anxiety.
Our amendment targets illegal doxing behavior and empowers government officials to take action and carry out investigations. If an online platform is concerned about the privacy law, government officials will be happy to meet with them to listen to their concerns.
Also on Tuesday, Lam said that ideologies posed risks to national security and urged parents, teachers and religious leaders to observe the behaviour of teenagers and report those who break the law to the authorities. Since China imposed a sweeping national security law last year, the most prominent government opponents have been jailed or have fled abroad. Critics say the legislation has crushed the city's wide-ranging rights and freedoms, while supporters say it has restored stability.
French authorities are investigating 4 fashion retailers and their connections to China's Xinjiang region. French prosecutors suspect them of concealing crimes against humanity. NTD's Patrick Hayden has the details.
French prosecutors have opened an investigation into 4 fashion retailers suspected of concealing crimes against humanity in China's Xinjiang region. The probe is linked to accusations against China over its treatments of minority Muslim Uyghurs, including forced labour. China denies the claims. A source told Reuters that Uniqlo France, a unit of Japan's fast retailing, Zara owner Inditex, France's SMCP and Skechers are the subject of the investigation. France has a central office to fight crimes against humanity, genocide and war crimes, founded in 2013. The US has already recognized China's treatment of Uyghurs as genocide. Zara owner Inditex rejected the claims it's tied to forced labor in China. SMCP said it would cooperate with the French authorities to prove the allegations false. And Fast Retailing said it hadn't been contacted and has no partnerships in Xinjiang. 2 non-governmental organizations filed the complaint in France in early April against the multinationals for concealment of forced labor and crimes against humanity. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. But before you go, be sure to check out our latest special report. In part 1 of this special report, we dive into the heart of U.S.-China competition and what we can do to stay ahead of the race. During the Cold War, nuclear arms were at the heart of the U.S.-Soviet Union race.
Just by being there, these weapons deter others from aggression and thereby serve the cause of peace.
Today, the struggle between democracy and communism continues, but the focus has switched from nuclear arms to something much smaller, microchips.
It has dramatically enhanced the Chinese Communist Party's military capabilities, and it is now enough a threat for the United States.
Containing Beijing's rise in the chip industry,
it's like pulling out Beijing's sharpest teeth.
But with U.S. and China deeply intertwined.
It's hard to hurt China without hurting ourselves.
In part 1 of this special report, we dive into the heart of U.S.-China competition and what we can do to stay ahead of the race. Be sure to check it out on Epoch TV through the link in the description down below. China in Focus is partnering with the platform, and that's where you can watch our exclusive content every Friday night. To subscribe, visit epoch.com/China in Focus. Thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow.